welcome to Horror Cult Trash Over, the show that discusses all of the masterpieces and trashpieces of genre cinema. I'm Gary.
And I'm Chris.
And Halloween Classics continues.
Yes, we are in the month of October, week 2.
Yes. And it continues with another classic.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this
Oh,
before.
shut up. Yes, it's probably a film we should have discussed before now.
Yeah.
But this is what we save the Halloween Classics for. The absolute masterpieces of genre cinema. And this is a masterpiece across all cinema, regardless of genre. This is one of the greatest films ever made, I think. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. Yeah. Absolutely.
We are, of course, talking about William Friedkin's The Exorcist from 1973. History with this film, it goes way back for me. How about you?
Yeah, no, I was only joking when I said I'd never heard of the film. Yeah, one of the first rites of passage horror films, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I remember watching it when I was younger, sleepover with some mates, put the VHS on, and yeah, it was, I mean, because of maybe bravado, but we were laughing at it because it was a group of teenagers watching it together. I think if I'd watched it by myself, it would have been different. And I think this is going to be interesting when we discuss the film.
Yeah.
In this episode,
I think the way you discover it is definitely what sets it up for how you feel about it today. Yeah. For me, I always knew of it as being this really restricted, terrifying film you could never watch. Like, as I mentioned on the podcast before, one of the first proper horror films I watched in full was Friday the 13th, and I kicked off my love for films. And I mean, it's always been there, but my proper serious, like taking it seriously, doing research, seeking out more films and such. But this was always the one where I'd watched 18s when I was younger, but this is the one my parents were always like, no, you're not watching it. It's not happening. But I remember my dad going to see the re-release at the cinema, and my mother went into labour with my sister the next day. So my mum, she's not going to listen to this anyway, so I can spill the tea, truly believes this film is cursed. And that anyone who watches it is cursed. There's a lot of cursed people out there. But it was always the thing, like, my dad would own it on DVD, and my mum would be so angry that he'd bring it into the house because it's fucking cursed surrounding The Exorcist. So, of course, there's a big hype around it, It's like, fucking hell. As a kid who didn't know better, I was like, Jesus Christ, what is this film? But I always remember my dad had a mouse mat with Reagan's face on it. Scared the shit out of me. Like, just looking at that mouse mat, and I remember when it was first released on Sky Box Office and the advertisement was on Sky a lot, that would scare me. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's all that hype around it, but when I watched it for the first time, when I was quite a lot older, it scared the shit out of me. And it's still one of those films I find scary to this day, and I truly believe this to be the number one scariest film ever made. I really do.
Oh, wow.
I really do. And I think it's down to the makeup effects. It's down to Linda Blair's performance. Because obviously I'm not a religious guy. You're not a religious guy. But like I said about on our Amityville Horror episode with Haunted House films, you don't have to believe in what this film is saying to find it scary.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. So when you first watched the film, were you by yourself?
I was with my sister.
With your sister? Your youngest sister?
Completely traumatized her. She would have been like 15, I think, when I put it on for her. And yeah, she couldn't sleep after. But yeah, no, so I was quite a bit older. So I'm 7 years older than my sister. So I'd have been like 22.
Oh, wow. So that's quite late to watch.
Yeah, I'd gone out. I'd, fully independent, brought it myself on Blu-ray, owned a copy of this cursed film, put it on. I'm like, yeah, okay, the hype is real. But what shocked me was how much of a slow burner it is. Like, with all the hype, and not just from my parents, just like everyone who I knew who had seen it. I've gone on about how disturbing it is and everything. So when it started the way it did, I was like, have I put the right film in? Is this the right film? And as it went on, I was like, okay, this is genuinely terrifying. This is a great horror film, but this is not just a great horror film. This is a great film. Like, this is well made. It's well acted. It's surprisingly, for a film with dialogue like Your Mother Sucks Cocks in Hell, surprisingly sophisticated. It, yeah, it is just a masterclass in filmmaking.
Yeah, and that's something that I can appreciate. So the more I watch it, the more I realize how well made it is. And I always thought it was a fantastic film, but I never found it scary. I never have found it scary. And I'll explain that as we go through the episode. But I think because of the way I first watched it, there was all the hype around it, but I'd also seen all the parodies.
Yeah.
I was also aware of all the parodies because there were loads of them. So when these things happened, and you know, we were a group of teenage guys, you know, we wouldn't ever admit to being scared by a film. We were all watching it together, so we found it hilariously funny, and that's kind of stayed with me, and it's kind of stuck with me, but also kind of allowed me to appreciate the filmmaking on display as well. And the more I watch it, the more I realise just how well made it is. And comparing it to other horror films as well, how sort of groundbreaking it was in 1973.
Yeah, it absolutely launched a subgenre, for sure. Like, we've had countless possession films since the release of The Exorcist, and none of them have been as good.
No.
Not a single one. They've come close. I mean, The Exorcist 3 itself is a fantastic film that comes close, but nothing has ever topped this.
No.
Because none of them can understand what makes this work so well.
Yeah, without just rehashing it.
Without just throwing in a scary child.
Without
that's
just
all they
doing
want to
the
do.
same thing. It is also one of those subgenres that doesn't lead itself to really being open to doing things differently.
No.
That was terrible grammar on my part. I do apologise.
It got lazy. It got lazier as it went on. See, I said lazier, so I'm combating your bad grammar.
But it's like the slasher film. So the fundamentals of the slasher film, you can do a lot with it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's kind of the same thing in different locations.
Yeah.
And then you can do, when you get into the meta stuff, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
But can you get meta with a possession film? Like,
probably.
Has anyone done it?
Well, supposedly Quentin Tarantino wants, should I say, because, you know, I mean, it's still a chance for him to make it, wanted his horror film, when he makes a proper horror film, more so than Death Proof, to be a possession film. Now, I feel like if anyone's going to make it meta and do it right, it's going to be Quentin Tarantino, because we all know how many films he watched and what he does with those films for his influences. But I mean, I'm talking about a well-known name there. A lot of the possession films these days are either fairly new filmmakers or filmmakers who make generally generic horror films. Now, I'm not including James Wan in this because he did a great job with The Conjuring 1 and 2. They're not strictly possession films, but they deal with possession. You know, so he knows what he's doing. If he made a straight-up possession film, which I don't think he has, but if he made a straight-up possession film, I think it would be great. But a lot of the time what you're getting is these filmmakers who have just watched The Exorcist many years ago, but then watch what's came after, and then they're kind of building on one another, and then by the time you know it, a possession film just consists of a girl with creepy eyes standing staring at someone for a while and moving on. And it's generic. You get some CGI in there. It's, you know where it's going to go. You know where it's going to go. The Last Exorcism, that was good. You haven't seen that one. That did it in a found footage style, but it pondered the question: is she actually possessed, or is this something else? So it kind of delves deeper into that side of things, which I find really interesting. But this does it all. This ponders that question. This shows you a possession. This shows you I'm dealing with a possession, all whilst we have this story of a mother trying to fight for what's best for her daughter. And that, to me, now outdoes everything else of this film, because I find Ellen Burstyn's story in this film the most compelling thing. No matter how many times you watch it, her performance and her dedication to it is what makes this film phenomenal for me.
it elevates it.
It's one of my favorite performances of all time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we'll get to that anyway. Directed by William Friedkin, directed by director of, should I say, previous podcast film Cruising,
Yes.
Killer Joe, The French Connection, Bug, Rules of Engagement, The Guardian, To Live and Die in LA, Sorcerer, The Boys in the Band, etc., etc. Stanley Kubrick was attached to direct the film, but only if he could produce it himself. As the studio was worried that he would go over budget and over schedule, it eventually settled on Mark Rydell, but William Peter Blatty insisted on William Friedkin instead. After a standoff with the studio, which initially refused to budget over Rydell, Blatty eventually got his way. Alfred Hitchcock turned down the chance to acquire the screen rights to the novel, and also turned down the chance to direct the film when another producer brought the rights to the property. Now, what does William Friedkin, Stanley Kubrick, and Alfred Hitchcock all have in common, other than the fact that they've all had a Halloween Classics episode?
I have no idea.
They are three of the greatest filmmakers of all time, but they're massively problematic.
Yeah.
And I mean,
okay.
yeah, massively problematic.
I thought it was going to be a fun fact. I'm sorry. I thought it was going to be they were all born on the Shetland Isles.
No. They they all had a daughter who was demonically possessed. No, their methods of filmmaking are very questionable. This is going to be just a warning. This is going to be a trivia heavy episode, so if you don't like trivia, still give us 5 stars. But we'll get into why William Friedkin
we've discussed on the podcast previously, particularly in the Shining episode. But yeah, they are 3 directors who didn't quite trust an actor to act.
Yeah, even when dealing with people as talented as Tippi Hedren, Shelley Duvall, and
Alan
Burstyn. You know?
Yeah. Seems particularly geared towards women as well. But we'll get into that. William Friedkin, though, a well-established director, The French Connection.
Yeah.
Just a couple of years previous.
Something else all 3 have in common.
Won Best Picture.
Absolutely.
So he didn't come in. I think this was his first horror film. I mean, but then Mark Rydell, what did he do?
I don't know.
Didn't he direct like Grease?
Maybe.
Or am I being?
I'm honestly not familiar with his name. But again, something else that all 3 directors have in common: The Shining, The Birds, and Psycho, and The Exorcist. All films released after well-established films by these directors in different genres.
Yeah,
and shows like the Amityville Horror episode again. Sometimes directors who don't direct horror are some of the best at making horror.
Yeah. So Mark Rydell, a bit of a weird one. He directed On Golden Pond, The Rose, the Bette Midler film.
Did he direct Grease?
The Fox, The River. He did not direct Grease. So I don't know who.
Did you get that mixed up because of Rydell High School in Grease?
Oh, of course. dumb bitch that I am. But yeah, not really. Probably cheaper. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
he was probably cheaper than William Friedkin because William Friedkin had The French Connection, which was a huge success. So yeah, he was probably cheaper rather than more capable of directing a horror film.
Yeah, written by William Peter Blatty, who also wrote The Exorcist 3, the Ninth
directed.
Did he direct it?
He directed that film, amazing. Yeah.
The Ninth Configuration, Mastermind, Darling Lily, The Great Bank Robbery, Gun, A Shot in the Dark, etc., etc. He based his novel on a supposedly genuine exorcism from 1949, which was partially performed in both Cottage City, Maryland, and St. Louis, Missouri.
Sorry, have you not watched Sex and the City, the movie?
Well, several area newspapers reported on a speech a minister gave to an amateur parapsychology society, in which he claimed to have exorcised a demon from a 13-year-old boy named Robbie, and that the ordeal lasted a little more than 6 weeks. So, it's probably a good time to ask if you agree that exorcisms on children are absolute child abuse.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, if if we have any religious listeners, you might want to fast forward a little bit. But religion as a whole and the church, some of the shit that goes on, it's fucking ridiculous. And this film's a good highlight of that. I mean, because obviously, you know, we're seeing an exorcist.
Is it?
Well, yeah, let me finish my sentence. We're seeing an exorcist as our hero here in this film, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the protagonist of the film.
Yeah.
The film's named after him. He's coming to save the day with the good word of God. We know Linda Blair is possessed in this film. But also, you know, it's still showing this man coming into this girl's life and doing horrific things. I mean, you know, with the holy water ripping holes in her skin and everything. This is showing it from a fantasy perspective, but this is also highlighting what people have done in real life.
Yes.
You know, they're coming in and tying this girl to a bed and fucking performing this ritual on her. Like I said, we know it's real in the film, but in real life, these people are obviously going through something and they are convinced that they're possessed by the devil. And it's just horrendous. It's fucking ridiculous.
It is. And as far as I know, they certainly don't do it anymore.
No.
It might happen where people don't know, but it certainly doesn't happen now.
No.
I suppose fundamentally, the point of the film does come from wherever you're coming from.
Yeah.
And that was badly worded. But as an atheist, I don't believe in religion.
No.
So I watched the film and I think this is a well-made horror film.
Yeah.
About, you know, complete fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
If you are highly religious, like Blatty was, this film shows religion conquering evil.
Yeah.
Religion being able to do what science wasn't able to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, Father Karras, you know, Max von Sydow, I can't remember his name in it. They are able to do what the doctors aren't able to do.
Yeah.
And therefore, this is a very positive interpretation of religion.
Yeah.
Particularly Catholicism.
Yeah.
So, I, as not a Catholic, don't really see that.
No.
Or that's part of the film that I don't really relate to.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of it is dependent on the audience watching it.
Yeah.
Really, you know, some people, but then even within the Catholic Church, some people celebrated the film and others thought it was the most disgusting thing they'd ever watched.
Yeah. I think as well, especially with the story it's based on, about the 13-year-old boy who was supposedly possessed and got an exorcism. I think that's also a sign of how much the world has been lacking in mental health resources in so long. Because let's face it, he was probably having mental health struggles.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's probably what was going on there. And no one would have considered that. Instead, they're like, oh, let's do a fucking exorcism. That's crazy.
Yeah, so the real story behind it, and in the context of real life, where I believe, well, I don't know for a fact, but I fully believe that, you know, possession does not exist.
Yeah.
I fully believe that. So the idea is that the real life story is probably, to me, more shocking than the film. Yeah. Because of how horrendous that would be. And that is child abuse. In the context of the film, because it doesn't leave the question, was this girl possessed? I mean, her head's spinning. Yeah. She's floating. You know, the supernatural is right there in front of you. So there's no question about it. So it looks at it differently. So I wouldn't look at the treatment of Regan in that way in the context of the film, because we know she's possessed. Yeah. Complete fiction, but we know she's possessed. Mm-hmm. Because she wouldn't be able to survive her head spinning like that, floating, you know, all that shit that's going on. You know, it's out of context of real life.
I did read something. It's quite a positive end to this tangent, that the boy who was possessed that inspired the story actually went on to be quite successful and live quite a happy life. So it didn't traumatize him too much, thankfully.
But it's also mentioned in the film at one point the idea that an exorcism, the doctor didn't believe exorcism was a real thing, but in some patients they find it quite comforting.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a placebo effect, where they think that an exorcism has been performed on them, they think the exorcism has worked, and it kind of cures whatever sort of mental health issue they were having.
It's like hypnotism.
Not completely, obviously.
It's like hypnotism, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
You know, you're convincing these people that... And it's kind of like the people that go to psychics when they've lost a loved one. You know, people go to these things for a comforting way forward that'll help them get out of things. But in reality, I mean, the people on the other end are just kind of exploiting people.
To a certain degree, I suppose. Yeah.
Budget, $11 million. Worldwide gross, $441.3 million.
Lane, and is that at the time? Because that's the re-release and shit.
Yeah, I don't know if that's as a whole, but in my trivia now, this isn't dated, so I'm not sure if it's still the case. But it was the highest grossing Warner Brothers film of all time and the highest grossing R-rated film of all time when adjusted for inflation.
Yeah. So that means butts and seats.
Yeah,
essentially.
To go through some of the history, because I couldn't find anywhere within the film to place this trivia. The Exorcist is the first horror film to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture. Get Out, Jaws, The Silence of the Lambs, and The Sixth Sense were all nominated after this, and of course, The Silence of the Lambs won. All of the awards that this was nominated for, fully deserved.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Have you got any of the others?
No.
Oh.
Do you?
Yeah. Well, I know the acting one because that's my thing.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean,
yeah. Ellen Burstyn was nominated for lead actress. Linda Blair nominated for supporting actress. Jason Miller nominated for supporting actor. Did it win for screenplay? I'm sure it won.
I think it did.
It won for adapted screenplay. Yeah, it did. Yeah.
And the Academy needs to recognise horror films more often, because this absolutely deserved, and it's how you know it's a milestone in horror when even the Academy notices it.
But this is, and I'm not a huge fan of the term, but I'm going to use it anyway. Elevated horror. It's elevated horror. Ellen Burstyn was a damn fine actress. You know, they had fucking Max von Sydow in it. You know, they gave it $11 million. You know, it's elevated horror. They put a lot. They didn't put the biggest amount, you know, because probably films around the time getting $20 million, but $11 million in 1973 was a big risk for a R-rated horror film. So yeah, it paved the way for horror at the Oscars, which hasn't been massive.
No, it needs to improve again, because I mean, I know we had Get Out, but since then, you know, we've had the likes of Toni Collette in Hereditary, obviously, Florence Pugh in Midsommar, Lupita Nyong'o in Us. People are actually, I mean, we can't say it because, you know, I haven't got a UK release date. People are saying Mia Goth in Pearl. You know, we've had all these great performances. Even if you're not going to nominate the films, we've had these fantastic performances in horror as elevated horror has become more popular. But still snubbed by the Oscars.
But that's recently. So would you say that between The Exorcist and, let's say, Get Out, would you say that there was a particular horror film, and I'm not including Silence of the Lambs, do you think there's a particular horror film that should have been nominated at the Oscars?
The Babadook.
You think?
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's just for lead actress. The fact that
But that's still recent. So you're thinking...
Well, it's between Get Out and The Exorcist.
The 80s and the 90s, the 2000s. Can you think of horror films that were made with that sort of elevation that could be Oscar worthy?
All I could think of is performances.
Yeah,
particularly
no, of course.
because of the way
I always have a tendency to focus on performances as well.
Because of the way that horror is looked upon by the Academy, it's difficult to say a few films. It's only, like I said, in recent years where I'll say films like, okay, you definitely should have been nominated. But performances wise, there's so many that it's missed out on.
It's a difficult one, and I can't think of any answer from the off the top of my head, because I can say that a horror film is expertly made, fantastic. You know, something like Candyman, which is really, really
Yeah.
well made, fantastic. You know, performed amazingly, just a really great film. Is it Oscar worthy? Like, what does Oscar mean to us? I suppose what needs to change is the idea of what is Oscar
Yeah.
worthy, because as much as horror is sort of underrepresented, thank you. Comedy also, you
Oh,
know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
difficult to do comedy, so it tends to gear towards big dramatic films and big dramatic performances. And that's another tangent. I do apologize.
Podcast regulars Siskel and Ebert gave The Exorcist 4 stars, which is amazing considering Siskel is obviously prudish about horror films and gave thumbs down to Poltergeist, Aliens, and Silence of the Lambs. Siskel frequently complained about the terrorizing of children in films and complained about similar themes in Poltergeist, but said The Exorcist had such stunning professionalism at every level, and the ending was so moving with the priests heroically sacrificing themselves for the child. And he loved it because of that. So there we go. That says it all.
That's the thing, though, isn't it? Like, you know, Poltergeist wasn't overtly religious, whereas The Exorcist is overtly religious, and religion saves the day.
Yeah.
So,
when originally released in the UK, a number of town councils imposed a complete ban on the showing of the film, which led to the bizarre spectacle of Exorcist bus trips, where enterprising travel companies organised buses to take groups to the nearest town where the film was showing. Didn't you say your mum saw The Exorcist at the cinema? Did she go on an Exorcist bus trip?
I don't think so. I mean, she's from Coventry. I don't think it'd be banned in Coventry.
In 1981, the film was released on video by Warner Home Video as one of its first UK releases. At the time, there was no requirement that videos should be classified by the BBFC, so the video was simply released on the strength of its existing X certificate. Contrary to popular opinion, the video version was never included on the list of video nasties and was never prosecuted for obscenity, testament perhaps to the popularity of the film and the high regard in which it was held. I mean, because it was nominated for Oscars. He ain't going to put an Oscar-nominated film on video nasty list.
Could you imagine?
After the Video Recordings Act, VRA, was introduced in 1984, it became necessary for the film to obtain a certificate for video release from the BBFC. The video release was continually delayed on the recommendation of Chief Censor James Furman, who advised Warner Bros. Against submitting the film for a UK video certificate. A possible 1988 release was also denied by Verman, who cited recent cases of child abuse as the reason. It was finally released on video, fully uncut, in June 1999, 5 months after Furman retired as a UK censor.
Oh, James Furman, the most boring bastards on the fucking planet.
But why would this? I mean, we've obviously spoke about exorcisms and child abuse and the link there. But why would this film affect that in any way? People already know fucking exorcisms exist. You know, if they're going to get an exorcism on their child, they're going to go and do it.
Yeah.
Regardless of this film.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, when a film is as popular as this, even without the internet in the 70s and 80s, everyone knows what fucking happens. Everyone knows what the fucking film is.
But James Furman, he was very famous for not trusting people to make decisions for themselves.
Yeah.
Very much so. Particularly working class people. He believed that they were very easily influenced by these films. And anything shown in these films, they were absolutely going to go out and do, because they're not only working class, they're stupid. And he was grade A twat.
He was. Upon its initial theatrical release, the film affected many audiences so strongly that in many theatres, paramedics were called to treat people who fainted and others who went into hysterics. One audience member fainted and broke his jaw on the seat in front of him, and then sued Warner Brothers and the filmmakers, claiming that the use of subliminal imagery in the film had caused him to pass out. The studio settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. Yeah. This is one of those films that I would have loved to have seen it at the cinema when it's first released.
Yeah.
Because I fully believe
No, you wouldn't.
Why?
You'd have been like, shh, shut up, be quiet.
Well, we saw it at the cinema twice. And
Who
the
did?
second... We did.
Did we?
Yeah, we did. At the Horror All Nights in Prince Charles Cinema. And the second time it was a mystery film at the Mockingbird in Birmingham.
Was it really?
Yeah, and we had 2 walkouts and people looking absolutely fucking disgusted because we were laughing at them.
Oh. Wow.
But it still has that effect to
I
this day.
can't remember seeing it on the
Really?
big screen.
We watched literally
so subliminal messages.
both versions.
Clearly.
So we watched the director's cut and the theatrical cut.
Wow. Crazy. Maybe there are.
It is subliminal.
Maybe
messages.
there is something there.
I fully believe it made people faint, and a lot of times I question, whether it's publicity stunts or whatever. But no, I fully believe that this film in 1973. This is before the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is probably the most extreme film people had seen mainstream wise at this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, for a mainstream audience who were used to, maybe seeing some rom-coms and such.
Also, this film, not just from my mum's words, from a lot of other people, this film is supposedly cursed. There are tales about ominous events surrounding the year-long shoot, including the deaths of 9 people associated with the production, and stories about a mysterious fire that destroyed the set one weekend. Actors Jack McGowan, and Vasiliki Miliaros died before the film was released. Christian evangelist Billy Graham claimed an actual demon was living in the celluloid reels of this film. A lot of films are cursed. We've already discussed one of them, Poltergeist. Amityville Horror, I believe there's stuff around that as well. I think that was openly admitted as fake. The Omen, Rosemary's Baby, 3 Men and a Baby.
3 Men and a Baby's not cursed.
Got a ghost on set.
There's an urban legend around it.
But The Exorcist is a famous one for its supposed on-set curse. That amount of deaths is pretty fucking weird.
It's unfortunate that obviously those people died and that happened, but I'm sure there's other films that aren't supernatural horror films, that have had a case of bad luck, or
New Mutants.
Yeah, not in that, but I mean had stuff surrounding them. But obviously, because it's a horror film, people are going to elevate that so much higher.
Yeah, there's countless documentaries and YouTube videos about it. Go and check it out. And also check out The Fear of God, 25 Years of the Exorcist, the Mark Kermode documentary. It's really fucking good. Even though it's obviously covers a limited space of time of the film being released. It's 25 years later. A lot of time's passed since then. It's still absolutely worth watching. It's a very good documentary.
Yeah, it is actually.
Should we talk about the cast?
Yes, in the section we like to call "Hey, I Know You."
I was hoping for a demonically possessed voice.
That was.
Hey, I know your Canton cast. Ellen Burstyn plays Chris McNeil. She was in Requiem for a Dream, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Pieces of a Woman, Interstellar, Red Dragon, The Last Picture Show, The Fountain. Oh, extensive career, still acting to this day, still slaying.
Yeah, a fantastic actress. Love her, and she wasn't really considered for the role to begin with, was she?
Well, we have a lot of trivia for Ellen Burstyn. During a 1984 reunion of the cast of The Exorcist on Good Morning America, Ellen Burstyn told a story of when she was in Arizona filming Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and The Exorcist was opening while she was there, so she went to see it. And the scene where Reagan has her arteriogram, where she gets a needle inserted into her neck and it's pulled out. Genuinely one of the scenes I find the most disturbing in the film. Absolutely. Was the part where most people fainted. After that scene, she saw a woman wobbling up the aisle, so she followed her and the woman fainted. She was at her aid, loosening her collar and talking to her. Then the woman became started to come around, and Ellen Burstyn realised that if the woman opened her eyes and saw her, it might cause her to panic.
Yeah.
So her exact words were that she might think she was in the Twilight Zone or something. So she asked assistance from another person to help her. Go on, Ellen Burstyn, helping people in the audience.
Yes.
What a great person.
I love Ellen Burstyn. She won the Oscar for Best Actress for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Yeah.
But this is a fairly early role for her, like big role. I think this is her first big major role.
Who won that year at the Oscars instead of Ellen Burstyn?
Oh, in 1974. I'm not sure, to be honest. Isn't that terrible?
Oh,
should be better at this.
I honestly thought you were an expert at all things Best Actress winners. So
okay, well I have to think. Excuse me.
If Ellen Burstyn had won, where would she have gone on your ranked list of Best Actress winners?
Fairly high. Fairly high. She was fantastic in this.
Yeah,
she really was. Yeah.
Yeah, she's definitely. This is probably within my top 5 favorite performances of all time. She just put so much into it, and it's just believable. It really is. In a film where we're looking at a lot of the unbelievable, she really, really makes it believable.
The winner in 1974, A Touch of Class, Glenda Jackson.
Have you seen it?
I haven't, no.
Okay.
But I do stan Glenda Jackson.
Okay.
So I haven't seen A Touch of Class yet. She was also nominated with Marsha Mason for Cinderella Liberty, Barbara Streisand for The Way We Were, and Joanne Woodward for Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams.
Barbara Streisand, one of the names thrown about when it came to casting this role.
Wow.
Also, Audrey Hepburn was William Friedkin's first choice to play the role.
After her fantastic performance in what I consider a horror film, almost, film that you're going to tell me the name of.
Am I?
When she's blind.
Oh, Wait Until Dark.
Wait Until Dark.
She was fantastic.
She was fantastic in that.
Warner Bros. Supported him because of her good critical and commercial reception with the studio, but she only agreed to do it, Queen behaviour, if it was filmed in Rome, because that's where she was living at the time. She couldn't be asked to go anywhere else. Oh my god, imagine if they filmed this in Rome. Fucking hell, the film was cursed already.
It kind of would have worked, I suppose. But also
that would have stirred some parts.
Yeah, it would have really it would have been an issue, but also it's kind of like the idea is that it could happen to anyone to a certain degree.
Yeah. So yeah, it would have added more to the stereotype. But as long as Audrey Hepburn's comfortable, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Anne Bancroft was another choice, but she was in the first month of pregnancy and was dropped. Shirley MacLaine turned down the role of Chris McNeil also in order to make the similar, though much less successful, The Possession of Joel Delaney.
Yeah, I really want to watch that.
That is interesting because that was 1972. So that was before The Exorcist. That was a year before.
I don't think The Exorcist is the very first possession film.
That's interesting how close they are together.
What I feel like Chris McNeil, maybe in the original novel, was based a little on Shirley MacLaine.
I'm literally about to say that exact thing. It's not just based on Shirley MacLaine, but Shirley MacLaine and her daughter, because they were friends with Blatty. Blatty. MacLaine is well aware of this and has talked about it in interviews. So yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Jane Fonda was offered the role, and an urban legend. I love that this is an urban legend. This is my type of urban legend. Has that she angrily called back Friedkin and called the script a capitalist piece of shit.
Yeah.
Fonda denies this, countering that she denied the producers politely. I hope she's lying. I hope it's true.
I hope she's lying. Do you know Jane Fonda? I fucking love Jane Fonda. She's just got something about. She's got spirit, hasn't she?
Yeah.
She's not to sound condescending, but she's a spitfire, and I like that in me women.
Yeah. Ooh. Jane Fonda or Jane Foster?
Who the fuck is Jane Foster?
Mighty Thor, but never mind.
Oh, okay.
Natalie Portman.
Oh, I see. A fictional character.
Yeah. Max von Sydow or Sydow, because some people refer to his name differently, so I'm going to go with Sydow. But I've literally heard people say 2 different versions of his name. So Sea-Doo, that was the other one that they were saying on the documentary. Sea-Doo.
Sea-Doo.
Max von Sea-Doo.
Max von Sea-Doo.
This cast is just mind blown. It's so impressive. Like Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, and Linda Blair in the 3 lead roles. That's such a good cast.
Well, Jason Miller is more
Jason
of a lead
Miller as
role.
well. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, having him in this film,
We hadn't done fuck all before
and
this
even
point.
even though Max von Sydow is by all accounts a straight man, showing up at the last 15 minutes, having the film named about you, that's queen behaviour. He plays Father Lancaster Merrin. He was in Flash Gordon, The Seventh Seal, The Virgin Spring, Star Wars The Force Awakens, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, Minority Report, Dune, Shutter Island, Wild Strawberries, The Magician. His list does go on. Very prolific and a fantastic actor. Really one of the greatest.
Yeah, and much younger than seen in the film.
Yeah, they did special
And
makeup.
I had no... I literally, because he died quite recently, and I'd sort of been aware of his career, and I was like, God, that man must be 150 years old by now. Ridiculous. And then it didn't really, gather to me, come to me until we watched the documentary. I was like, oh, of course he was playing much older than he was.
Very impressive.
The special effects very good.
Never would have known.
No.
The studio wanted Marlon Brando for this role.
Wow. Okay.
William Friedkin was like, fuck no, because if Brando was in it, it would become a Brando film instead of the important film he wanted to make, and that's so true. He would have made it all about himself.
Yeah. And Max von Sydow, very serious actor.
Yeah.
He'd done quite a few Ingmar Bergman films by this point, so I feel like this is maybe his first big role in America.
Yeah. Interesting in the way that he's also definitely not Catholic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did read his religion.
He's an actor, isn't he?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, but,
It's called acting, Viduck.
Yeah, I know, but William Friedkin was convinced to have him for this role, and he just sells it. He sells every second of it.
He does.
Linda Blair, previous star of the podcast, plays Reagan McNeil. She was in Savage Streets, Howl Night, Roller Boogie, Chained Heat, Summer of Fear, Grotesque, Super Suckers, Calendar Girl, Fatal Blonde, and lots more, including the abomination that is The Exorcist 2, The Heretic. Definitely a future podcast film.
You said you would never watch that film again.
Unless for the podcast. It's in my terms and conditions.
Oh, I see.
This was some role for a girl of her age.
Yes.
She received death threats from religious people who believed the film glorified Satan, the other end of the people we were discussing.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers had bodyguards protecting her for 6 months after the film's release. She received her Best Supporting Actress nomination before it was widely known that previous supporting actress winner Mercedes McCambridge had actually provided the voice of the demon. By Academy rules, once Blair was given the nomination, it could not be withdrawn. But the controversy about Blair giving the credit for it for another actress's work ruined her chances of winning the award, supposedly. Producers sought to originally have Jamie Lee Curtis audition for the role of Reagan McNeil, but Janet Leigh said, "You are not having my daughter in this fucking role. Are you kidding me?"
Has she not been a little old? Oh no, I suppose she was.
No, she was a teenager. I know it's hard to
She
believe. She was a
was.
teenager
I
in
always
Halloween.
feel like Jamie Lee Curtis was much older than she
She's
was.
fucking Benjamin Button.
in
She's
Halloween.
she's aged in reverse.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she would have looked like she was 40. But yeah, Mercedes McCambridge, that's an interesting situation, isn't it? It is later on in my trivia, but it's something.
Yeah, it's strange that they thought that Linda Blair did that voice.
Yeah.
And that the it's weird that they nominated her based solely on the voice. But I do understand. There's also an older actress that took her place during the scenes that a child really shouldn't have been part of as well. So it does beg the question, how much of that performance is Linda Blair? Because obviously you've got the build-up to, and she does a fine job, but it's not the exciting part. The exciting part is when she's possessed. So So how much of that really was Linda Blair?
I mean, we've seen her in a documentary go through all the makeup stuff and being on set
Yeah.
during the possession scenes. So, she does play a big chunk of the role. But yeah, I mean, skipping ahead a bit to that trivia, she did file a lawsuit, Mercedes McCambridge, for it, for not receiving the credit on the film. She was massively disappointed about it because she was friends with William Friedkin, and he just completely fucked her over.
Yeah, that's really shitty.
It also
actually.
led on to something else. Eileen Dietz, do you know the name?
No.
She wishes you knew the name. She also claimed that she played the role of the demon during the exorcism scene.
Oh.
William Friedkin denies this and has cited that Dietz's actual screen time. And now, obviously, he spoke out about the McCambridge thing since, and I believe he's admitted it.
Yeah.
But he said, no, who the fuck is this? Dietz's actual screen time is less than 1 minute, as she served as little more than a body double for Linda Blair. Nevertheless, much like a recent film we watched at Fright Fest and Once and Future Smash, Dietz, as of 2014, continues to promote herself as Captain Howdy, the demon from the film, in interviews and selling autographs at horror conventions around the world.
Oh, that's sad. No, that's sad, that is. Oh my god.
Literally, she's been at a bunch of horror cons near us.
Really?
Yeah. As Pazuzu or Captain Howdy.
Oh god.
Claiming that she is the demon in The Exorcist.
Wowzers. Yeah. Mercedes McCambridge, I mean, that voice, though, is a huge part of the success of the film and the reason why those scenes are so creepy.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, William Friedkin is completely out of order for not.
Yeah, I mean, we watched her in, Johnny Guitar, which we loved. Linda Blair, it's a difficult one because how much of the performance was that voice?
Yeah.
Like, really?
But, the childish innocence before she's possessed, I believe, provides a big impact on when she is possessed. You really get to know this girl before that point. And the scenes where she's having all the medical examinations and everything, she fucking sells the shit out of those scenes.
That's true. That is also very true.
In those scenes.
She didn't win Best Supporting Actress. No. It was won by Tatum O'Neal for Paper Moon.
Okay.
Youngest to ever win.
Oh, wow. So 2 kids.
Two kids up for the award. Also nominated Candy Clark for American Graffiti. Madeline Kahn for Paper Moon. Sylvia Sidney for Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams.
Okay.
I haven't seen any of those other films, I must say. But the idea is that Tatum O'Neal, despite being amazing in the role, it was a lead actress performance. Yeah. So maybe probably shouldn't have been nominated for supporting actress. But I don't think, after all the controversy, Linda Blair would have won.
No.
She does fantastic in this. She's also a B movie queen.
She's an icon. Not always shows the best roles, but she is an icon.
She maybe, would you say, is the B movie queen?
No, that's Sybil Downing.
You think Sybil?
That's absolutely Sybil
not Linnea
Downing.
Quigley?
It's close, but it's Sybil Downing. To have the audacity to take as many random roles as she has done and still be talking about it to this day like she's a
roles are random.
Yeah, but
Miami Sybil Downing.
Sybil Downing on Twitter talks about these roles like they're all Oscar-winning classics to this day, and to me, you can't top that sort of behaviour. Linda Blair comes close, though, and so does Linnea Quigley. Yeah. Lee J. Cobb plays Lieutenant William Kinderman. He was in 12 Angry Men, On the Waterfront, Exodus, Last Moments, That Lucky Touch, The Great Kidnapping, Nick the Sting, etc., etc. Got no interesting trivia about him, but you know what? He does a great job of what he's got.
If somebody turned around to you and said, draw a picture of a detective in a 1973 film, you would draw that picture.
It's true.
It's fine.
Jason Miller, father of Lost Boys star Jason Patrick, plays Father Damien Karras. He was in The Exorcist 3, Rudy, That Championship Season, Mummy, Toy Soldiers, Vampire, The Ninth Configuration, Marilyn, The Untold Story, and much more.
But this was his first role. Wasn't he like a playwright? He was a writer of some...
Maybe.
Yeah, I think he was. And I don't know how he got the role. I'm assuming he went for it and got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jack Nicholson was up for the role of Father Karras, but Jason Miller landed the role because William Friedkin thought that Jack Nicholson was too unholy to ever play a priest.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson is better playing a possessed person than
true.
A priest.
And now, almost an hour into our episode, it's time for our feature presentation. And just to let you know, today we will be discussing the director's cut, aka the version you've never seen, which is no longer true. Lots of people have seen it.
Which, for some people, is the only version they've seen.
Yes, it's our feature presentation.
Nobody expected it. Nobody believed it. And nothing could stop it. The one hope. The only hope. The Exorcist. Rated R. The movie you've been waiting for. Without the wait.
In northern Iraq, Catholic priest Lancaster Merrin participates in an archaeological dig which unearths a medallion of Saint Joseph and an artifact representing Pazuzu, an ancient demon. As Merrin prepares to leave Iraq, he encounters a large statue of Pazuzu with a giant erection and observes two dogs fighting in the desert.
Just to clarify, Pazuzu has the giant erection, and
yeah, not Father Merrin.
Not Father Merrin.
Although, I mean, we are seeing him mostly his face only. Such a weird opening for this film. And like I said earlier, you know, it is one that really took me by surprise when I first watched it. I did not expect it to start like this at all.
I didn't. I was confused. First time watching it, I was like, what is this? Now I realise, and I don't know for a fact, but it's what I think. It's my opinion. Do you think the fact that Pazuzu is the demon that possesses Reagan, yeah?
Yeah, I thought that was common knowledge.
Do you think that the fact that we see Pazuzu in northern Iraq, do you think it's a little xenophobic?
Potentially.
Do you think it's easier for Blatty to blame, you know,
it is
a sort of foreign entity?
Yeah, it is dodgy that a lot of possession films come from a foreign place. It's always some ancient statue or demon from another country that could never be America.
No.
You can never... Evil like this could not be unearthed from America.
Because this is the only scene shot in northern Iraq.
Yeah.
It's probably a costly scene.
Yeah.
Travel and all that stuff. It doesn't necessarily fit within the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessary to the rest of the film exactly. Even though it's very well shot, very well made, and that image at the end is very, very good. Yeah. But I felt a little bit like, oh, okay, so we're gonna blame something foreign for all this. So this little white American girl getting possessed is something that's from something that's happened in northern Iraq. Okay.
Which reminds me, I don't know why it reminds me, it's completely random. But going back to my recommendation to watch The Fear of God, if you ever wanted to see two grown men arguing, looking like they're about to get into a fist fight over one line of dialogue at the end of the film, please watch that documentary for this entertaining argument between William Peter Blatty and William Friedkin. It's the battle of the two Williams. It's hilarious. Yeah, moving on.
Just type in Battle of the Two Willies in Google and see what pops up.
In Georgetown, actress Chris McNeil is working on a film directed by her friend Burke Dennings. Chris lives for the production in a well-appointed house with housekeepers and her daughter Reagan. We're introduced to Chris as she witnesses weird noises at nighttime in the house and finds Reagan's window wide open. The next day she goes to work on her film and absolutely slays, with a capital S, her performance as a queen leading a school protest. And this is when we get the iconic Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield as she walks home.
Yes.
And immediately from this scene, we know Ellen Burstyn's come to slay. She's not messing around. She has come to own this fucking film.
She has. She really has. I found it interesting, the kind of film that was being filmed about student protests
Yeah.
I'm assuming pro-student protests, quite a leftist film, and she is kind of the lefty actress, Shirley MacLaine, or probably Jane Fonda as well, that idea. Yeah, I found it interesting that some people have kind of latched onto this, and I think there's some truth into it as well. And the idea that she's been punished for her kind of leftist views, and this leftist film is kind of being punished. We know Blatty is very religious, and he has no issues with telling you that Chris McNeil at the beginning of the film isn't really seen to be religious.
No.
So maybe, she's a single mother. Maybe this is some form of punishment.
I mean, further to that, there's a scene later on where she finds a crucifix in Reagan's room and she's fuming. Yeah. And I really think scenes like that as well, really show that she's not religious.
But by the end of the film, she's a believer. Of
course. Going to the soundtrack, you may recall Lalo Schifrin from the Amityville Horror episode. There's a rumour that score was the score for The Exorcist. How true that is, I don't know. But either way, he put forward a score for this film and it was rejected. William Friedkin later said that if he'd heard some music of Tangerine Dream, who did the score for Sorcerer, he would have had them score this film from the Sorcerer soundtrack liner notes. That is the information. Friedkin actually hated the music so much that he yelled for the orchestra to stop playing, removed the reels that had been recording the music from the sound desk, threw them out into the streets, all in front of Lalo and his wife. He is such a piece of shit. He also hired Bernard Herrmann,
right,
who didn't want to compose the music score for the film because he felt that Friedkin interfered with him far too much. In Susan King's 2011 with Dorothy Herrmann interview, who is Bernard Herrmann's daughter, she revealed that William Friedkin had told her father that he wanted to see the music every single day. Dorothy was looking forward to having a dinner at Hotel Carlisle at that time. When she arrived at the hotel suite and Herrmann said not to touch anything, Herrmann packed everything in his suitcase, told Friedkin to go fuck himself, and then walked out with his brother in Washington Heights. So William Friedkin's just fucking pissing everyone off.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that this film's as good as it is with his fucking attitude.
It's a difficult one. Because obviously the idea of the dickhead director, William Friedkin wasn't the first dickhead director, and he surely wasn't the last dickhead director. It's a weird one, because why be so intense? Like, what was the film where the director got so angry at one point his nose started bleeding?
What film was that?
What was it? It was a podcast film as well, wasn't it? He got so angry that his nose just started bleeding. Was it?
It's where they thought an actor had punched him.
Yeah. Oh, what was it? It wasn't Verhoeven, was it? Oh,
yes, it was. It was Paul Verhoeven with Michael Douglas in Basic Instinct.
Oh, it was. Yeah. So Paul Verhoeven, fantastic director, but got so intensely angry that his nose started bleeding. Like, bitch, really, it's not that serious. You're just making a film here. Why be such an asshole? And it's so frustrating because some of the... And I don't think they're related. I don't think there's a correlation between the two.
No.
But there's some fantastic 5-star masterpiece films that have been directed by fucking shits. Absolute shits who have been shits on film. They don't trust actors to be able to perform, even though that's what they're paid for. They can't... what were we watching last night? Barbarian
Sound Studio.
And the director's a dick in that as well. And just, like, being so rude to people. It's like, fucking hell.
Yeah.
It's really not that serious. Can't you, all come together and not be twats.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of 5-star masterpiece films, probably directed by women, that have had a lovely stage time,
Yeah.
filming time and all that stuff. You don't hear anyone talking about Amy Heckerling, like
No.
she's done loads of fantastic films.
Yeah. A
Sorry,
Georgetown-based
ran over.
priest Damien Karras visits his mother in New York. Reagan tells her mother about an imaginary friend named Captain Howdy and shows her how she's been talking to him through a Ouija board. And he's a bit of a dick because he refuses to answer as to whether or not Chris McNeil is pretty.
Yeah.
Fucking rude.
He should know. He definitely should know. But anyone, particularly in the 70s, should know that the Ouija board is a bad idea.
Karras confides to a colleague that he feels unfit in his role as counsellor to other priests, citing a crisis of faith, which is an ongoing theme here, which again leads to some dodgy religion supporting, religious praise. How by the end of the film he finds his faith.
Yeah, I suppose it depends. Again, it's where are you coming from looking at this? If you're a religious person, then obviously that's a good thing, and we're not necessarily against religion.
I mean, we're against the ones that are against us.
No, but the thing is, it's. I don't want to get too much into my opinions of religion.
We already did that about an hour ago.
We'd be here forever. No, like really get into it. But I think as long as you're not harming anybody else, you can do whatever the fuck you like.
Yeah.
So I kind of look at it like that. So I'm not completely against that side of it.
Yeah.
To be fair,
As long as you're not in
as long as people are interpreting it in the correct way.
Yeah, as long as you're not in Mary M. Cosby's cult.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
After sharing a lovely scene with Reagan, telling her how much she'll always love Reagan's father, Chris is fuming on the phone to the operator, wanting to get through to Reagan's father because he didn't call her on her birthday, and she is fucking. She's had it. She's absolutely had it.
She has. Yeah, the broken family.
Yeah.
The idea, the single mother who's working all the time.
The father who's so absent to the point we don't even see him once.
No.
Yeah.
So, is this Blatty, is this his commentary on families in the 70s, broken families, single parents who aren't able to look after their kid? Chris McNeil, she's a famous actress, so she can afford someone to look after Reagan, but if she wasn't,
Yeah. I mean, her dad doesn't even come to see her when she's going through the possession stuff.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very interesting commentary there.
Yeah.
Reagan gets into her mum's bed because her bed was shaking and she couldn't sleep. Chris hears more weird noises, so goes to investigate in the attic, where we get a fantastic jump scare, where the candle she takes up into the attic blows itself out, nearly setting her on fire in the process. The fire literally just misses her face, and Carl, one of the housekeepers, gives her a jump scare to inform her that there's no rats as she initially expected.
It's true, there are no rats.
And it's this sort of slow building terror where it's like, oh shit, what the fuck is going on in this house? But they don't know they're in a horror film.
Yeah.
That's why it works so well. Because, obviously Chris is like, okay, something weird is going on here, but she immediately puts it down to rats. She's not immediately walking around like she's in a fucking horror film.
Yeah.
It builds itself up.
And when Reagan says about her bed shake, she's like,
yeah.
Shut up, you dumb bitch. Just screaming.
Which is always great. Anyone who listens to this podcast knows that's what we're a fan of. Not people who know they're in a horror film.
I hate it.
In the local church, a statue of Mary
Gary.
is found desecrated with a big silver cock and orange painted tits.
No, the orange painted are the traffic cones.
No, they're orange painted.
Oh, I
tits.
thought they were traffic cones.
I wish they were traffic cones.
Oh, did I miss? What? I didn't see that.
Again, very different scene for those who are religious and those who are not religious.
But they were pointy breasts, weren't they?
They were pointy.
So do you
the
think
statue were pointy.
Do you think Jean-Paul Gaultier was like Madonna?
Yeah.
Madonna. Oh yeah, pointy bra.
Reagan is taken for medical tests where she acts weird. We get the first flash of the demon face during this scene. Of course, inspired heavily by the mask from last week's podcast film, Annie Barber.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's official.
Yeah.
Yeah, William
I
Friedkin
wasn't
said.
denying that.
William Friedkin thinks Annie Barber is one of the greatest films ever made.
He'd be right. The doctor prescribes Reagan Ritalin,
Yeah.
which is a medication mainly given in treatment of ADHD.
Yeah.
I think it was quite interesting that the first thing was to throw pills at it.
Yes. Yeah. He thinks it's a disorder of the nerves.
Yeah.
And he also tells Chris that Reagan told him to keep his fingers away from her goddamn cunt whilst he was examining her.
Yes. Now Chris laughs this off to a certain degree.
She does,
doesn't
yeah.
she? She's embarrassed, but they
Yeah.
do kind of laugh it off, like, oh my god, what's she?
What's she like?
What is she
Mad
like?
she is.
Bloody hell. Where's she learned that word from? Certainly not me.
Karis's mother has been admitted to a psychiatric hospital and he visits her. She blames him, thinking that he was the one who put her there. And these scenes are really effective because of how well the actress performs the role playing Karis's mother.
She's really good.
Yeah,
She's
there's
very
just something
good.
really eerie, and you know, by 2022 standards, it's not exactly the best representation for mental health. But the hospital where it goes to, there's just something weird about it. Something is off there. Even though we know it's a psychiatric hospital, it's just something unnerving about the atmosphere during the scene, whether it's the lack of music, the way it's filmed, the performances. It's just really unsettling.
Yeah, what I found really interesting, and it's this scene and the scene afterwards, Father Karras is kind of reminded that she's stuck in a shithole.
Yeah.
She is. Her
is.
living standards aren't
Yeah.
great. He's kind of had to put her in a psychiatric hospital because it's, I'm assuming, easier or cheaper, because she isn't necessarily to the stage that the others are there in their mental health struggles. But it was easier for him to put her there. He essentially has to do this because he's a priest.
Yeah.
And because he chose to be a priest, and being a priest doesn't pay very well, he kind of has to take whatever he can get. He can't help her as much as he would like.
Yeah.
And her last days, you know, spoiler alert, and they are her last days, are, you know, stressful for her, living in a shithole, not a great area, and mainly because he chose to be a priest.
Yeah.
He maybe could have helped her more if he'd chosen something else, a more secular job.
Yeah.
And then we cut to Chris, who isn't religious, who has chose a more secular job as an actress, quite lefty, you know. She's hosting a real swanky party for the Georgetown elite
That leads
and the film folk. So it's quite an interesting contrast between Chris, who can afford all this medical, these doctors, all of this, constantly getting tested. Well, you know, we'll get this test, this test, this test, this test, which in America would have cost her a lot of money compared to Father Karras, whose mother needed that medical help, who needed all of that but can't afford it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the costly medicine, the costly doctors, all of that isn't what helps Reagan.
Yeah.
It's religion that helps Reagan. So I think what Blatty is saying, in the contrast between these two families, is that, you know, some of what Chris has could be given to, you know, Father Karras and his mother, and some of what Father Karras has by the end, because I know he's conflicted, but what he has could go over to Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I was literally going to say, you know, the interesting question here is, what is there to make of the parallels between the single mother and child in two different areas of the film? Well, obviously he's not a child, but, you know, with Father Karras and his mother, and then Reagan and her mother, you know, we see one side, we have Father Karras, whose mother is dying and he can't really do anything about it.
Mm.
And then we have Reagan and Chris, where her daughter is gonna die if something's not done about it.
Yeah.
But she can get all that done. You know, it's a very, very interesting contrast, which I've never really thought about until about 5 minutes ago when you mentioned it. So yeah, no, that is really interesting.
I feel like it was deliberate that these two scenes
Yeah.
were back to back. You know,
Yeah.
Chris, she's had her hair done. She's got a beautiful, like, is it almost
Oh my god,
lavender dress, like a very
Campus
light
dress.
blue. She's
so chic.
serving so chic.
Yeah, she's slaying. She's, oh my god, yeah, it's full of glitter. She is, and that wig. Oh, if it even is a wig, I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's getting giving a little bit of Margaret Thatcher, but before Thatcher ruined it. She asks. So at the party is camp priest Father Dyer.
Yeah, played by an actual priest, Reverend
Okay.
William O'Malley.
Yeah, camp though, isn't he?
Very
He's a
camp.
bit
He is. Oh my god.
He's like, oh, I could have been on Broadway. Oh.
My idea of heaven is a big white nightclub with me as a headliner, and they all love me.
He tells Chris about Father Karras because Chris had seen Father Karras as she was walking earlier in the film. And do you think that Chris fancied a little bit of Father Karras?
I think she did, but I'm not
I
going to
think
lie.
so.
I think Father Dyer also fancies a little bit
I
of
think
Karras.
so, yeah.
And the film definitely hints towards it. Especially a little scene later on after his mum died. And the final scene together as well. I do feel like, because it's never expressed what their sexuality is, either of them. But, you know, they're both priests, so immediately you got to assume that they're straight. But I don't know. I think there's something there.
It's a difficult one because obviously
They're very good
with
friends.
all the religious themes.
Hey,
I
hang
certainly
on.
don't think they were
Hang
written
on.
gay.
You know what the demon says later on to him.
I do understand. Yeah, I do understand that. Yeah.
You know, I'm not forcing the narrative. It's all there. Yeah. So Father Dyer's hosting a piano sing along, and Reagan appears and ruins his big performance by urinating on the carpet.
This to me was the most uncomfortable scene.
Yeah, it is really disturbing.
This to me, because a lot of the horror within the film is of supernatural nature.
Yeah.
This to me was the creepiest.
Mm-hmm.
It's this and the hospital scenes.
Yeah.
That make me feel uncomfortable.
Mm.
When I first watched this was the one that stuck with me the most.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know it's not supernatural. It could happen, you know, and it was really creepy, like really creepy.
After Chris puts Reagan to bed, her bed shakes violently and Chris witnesses it. Dyer consoles Karras, he comforts his good friend, and Karras expresses guilt on not having been there with his mother when she died. Karras dreams of his mother, a Saint Joseph medallion, and briefly a demonic face, the same one that we saw flash with Reagan earlier on.
Yeah, Pazuzu.
Yeah, really disturbing dream sequence. You know, dream sequences can go one of two ways, but this is really disturbing. And then it transitions to Reagan becoming violent during more medical tests. Tests that fail to find anything physically wrong with her. This includes the disturbing arteriogram. There we go.
Well done.
Yeah,
Gary.
which I genuinely struggle to watch this scene. It's just
horrible.
Yeah.
So I can understand why this is probably the scene where people fainted, because people hate needles and hate blood, and I'm assuming it wasn't real. I really hope it wasn't real, but it looks very real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a horror. Yeah. Blech.
Something really interesting in this scene as well is the bearded man who assists the doctor is Paul Bateson. He was an X-ray technician at NYU Medical Center, where the scene was shot and managed to get that small part. In 1979, he was convicted of the murder of a film critic and was censored. No, it certainly wasn't censored. sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, he bragged about and was a suspect in the murders of 6 men whom he said he picked up in gay bars, had sex with them, and then murdered and dismembered their bodies and put them in plastic bags for fun in 1977 and 1978. They were known as the Bag Murders, although investigators believed his story. He was never officially charged, and those murders have technically never been solved. Bateson was released from prison in 2004. The whole story revolving the Bag Murders were later fictionalized in Friedkin's Cruising. In fucking insane that this man admitted to murdering a bunch of gay people and was not charged.
Yeah.
Insane. It really is, and it really says all you need to know about American law. Yeah. Released from prison. He should have had a life sentence.
And there are people doing life sentences for weed possession.
Yeah.
Shit like that.
Yeah. That man confessed to murdering those people and they refused to believe it.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Also adds to the Exorcist curse that they had a fucking murderer on set.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you... Well, I suppose it would have came out and he would have Friedkin would have realised that he was in this film. And then did Cruising.
Yeah, what do you think to Cruising being made off of someone that Friedkin hired murdering people?
It's weird.
It doesn't take away from it being a good film. I mean, Cruising's great.
No,
it's a little
it's
iffy.
interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, so many horror films are based on real serial killers.
This is very close to William Friedkin, though.
To a certain degree, but really, what, one day on set?
Yeah, I suppose.
The most.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like they were pals.
Yeah.
Pals?
During a house call, a demonically possessed Reagan exhibits abnormal strength. She is thrown back and forth on her bed, her eyes turn completely white. She has this massive lump in her throat, and she tells the doctors to fuck her as they sedate her. Linda Blair said in a recent interview that her spine was fractured in that scene, and the contraption that was supposed to lift her up and down broke loose, and her spine was permanently injured.
These?
Really unnecessary.
Really unnecessary.
Her telling the doctors to fuck her is even more disturbing than her eyes turning white.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And is this the bit where the sow is mine?
Maybe.
The demon saying the sow is mine?
Maybe.
What is a sow? I wrote it down.
Sow?
Sow.
Oh.
S-O-W.
Okay.
S-O-W.
You sure they didn't say Sal?
No, sow. Sow. Oh, it might have been, actually. Sow.
Yeah.
Oh, a sow is an adult female pig. Oh my god.
Okay, well, yeah, there we go.
How rude.
One night, Chris finds the house empty except for a sleeping Reagan. We get a brief glimpse of the demon face in the background as she's walking through the house. Really fantastic jump scare because there's no sound. It just flashes there, and it really, the first time I watched it, really made me jump. Dennings is...
The Exorcist walked so 1,000 YouTube videos could run.
Dennings is found dead at the foot of an outdoor staircase beneath Reagan's window. After Chris is told about this, Reagan walks down the stairs like a spider and bleeds from her mouth. Played by contortionist Ann Miles in this scene.
Oh, okay.
Who was hired to perform this scene in particular.
Was Linda Blair even in this film?
Miss Miles was able to perform the scene by the use of a harness and flying wires hung above the staircase used on the set. She would advise Friedkin when she was just barely touching the stairs with her hands and feet, and then she maintained that light touch as she was moved down the staircase by the harness and wires. Friedkin deleted the scene before the film's December release. He felt it was too much of an effect because it appeared so early on in the film. He later admitted that another reason for omitting the scene was that there was no way to hide the wires from view at the time. But 30 years later, Friedkin changed his mind and added the scene back in for the extended version with the wires digitally removed. Thankfully, we've seen the full deleted scene, and Reagan has like a snake's tongue after and chases after what's her name, the nanny.
Yeah.
I'm glad they cut that bit out at the end. That just looks silly. The imagery of the spider world, of the spider walk, which I remember being a massive deal surrounding the extended version, fucking terrifying. It really is. It's random, not sure how necessary it is. We already know she's possessed, but it's fucking scary.
It's a great image, really well done. Completely doesn't fit in the film at that point. He was right to take it out. And I suppose if not there, where would you put it?
Yeah,
because it is a fantastic image.
Yeah,
doesn't work there. I 100% agree that it does not work there.
Been imitated thousands of times after, of no one understanding why it looks so scary.
Yeah.
Psychiatrist speaks to Reagan about Captain Howdy while she sits in a chair with her hand in a position like someone's middle-aged aunt asking if someone's gay. Is he a bit,
Sure.
The psychiatrist talks to the demon inside of Reagan, and she squeezes his balls, forcing him to fall to the floor in a shot that kind of looks like the detective's death scene in Psycho.
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah.
When he's going down the stairs, like it looks exactly like that.
That's true.
Again, this is really fucking disturbing.
Yeah. I mean, this is the moment where shit starts to hit the fan. We've got a little. This is why the spider walk doesn't work where it is.
Yeah.
Because this is the beginning, the real beginnings of her being tied to the bed, fully possessed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a shocking scene.
The homicide detective William Kinderman questions Karras, confiding that Denning's body was found with its head turned backwards. What's your opinion on the Denning's character? Because in the book, he was molesting Reagan. So the fact that he was in her bedroom when he was murdered kind of hints towards that being a case in this film as well.
Oh, I see.
The fact that he was there when he was murdered and pushed out the window.
That wasn't what I was getting, if I'm being honest.
Well, anyone who hasn't read the book, I mean, I haven't read it myself, it's just in the trivia. Anyone who hasn't read the book would not think that.
I didn't, that's not what I thought. I just thought he was fodder to show, in horror films, you have to kind of establish how far it's willing to go.
Yeah.
Is this demon capable of murder? Well, you kind of have to establish that. So that's what I assumed it was for. And also there was the suggestion that Burke and Chris maybe would have a relationship.
Yeah.
As well. So maybe it's the idea of, because it's Reagan that asked those questions. So I thought it was just a way of sort of getting rid of a character that wasn't necessarily the most important.
No, I mean, I think it's also interesting that he was accusing housekeeper Carl of being a Nazi because he's German, and he's not exactly shown as the nicest character.
No, he's a knobhead.
He's always obnoxious and drunk and whatnot.
Drunk, yeah.
So, yeah, I just find it interesting that the wrongdoer of the film was the first one to be murdered.
Yeah, well, the only one, really.
Well, yeah, I
suppose.
Kind of. Reagan's condition worsens and her body becomes covered with sores. A doctor mentions exorcism as a remote option, suggesting a possible psychological benefit. Chris finds a crucifix hidden under Reagan's pillow, but no one put it there. And Kinderman visits Chris, explaining that the only plausible explanation for Denning's death is that he was pushed from Reagan's window. Supposedly, his head was twisted around as well before he was pushed.
Okay. Yeah, 180 degrees.
Yeah. Which makes the next scene all the more effective. In a bizarre series of events, as Kinderman leaves after asking for Chris's autograph, because, why wouldn't you?
He saw Angel 6 times.
He did. The possessed Reagan stabs at her genitals with a crucifix while shouting, "Let Jesus fuck you." She then, and I shit you not, forces Chris's head onto her crotch, shouting, "Lick me." She then slaps her mother across the room and turns her head backwards before saying, "Do you know what she did, your canting daughter?" in Dennings' voice. Yeah, for me, one of the most disturbing sequences in horror cinema history.
For me, one of the campest.
Campus forcing her mother to lick her out.
But this is the scene that's been parodied to death.
Of course.
This is the scene that's been parodied. You know, I'd seen all the parodies before I watched it, and this is the scene where we really differ.
Yeah.
Yes, it's disturbing. I can give you a list of reasons why it's disturbing.
Yeah.
But because of how I first watched the film, because of all the sort of parodies around this scene for decades, you know, because, you know, I'm not particularly scared of horror films and stuff like that, because I prize camp value over a lot of other things in films.
Yeah.
Not all the time. I sort of look at it as a thrillingly camp scene. You, having come to the film differently to me, see it for its intended ppurposes.
Yeah, I mean, just the image of her masturbating with a crucifix, and her face has slightly changed by this point, but you can still see it's a child. You can still see it's Linda Blair. That's just fucking horrific, and it's not subtle about it either. We see her masturbating with a crucifix. It's not. They don't really hide it.
No.
And the blood splattering out of it. It's a really horrific image. And I think the fact that she takes on Dennings' voice and twists her head around the way she twists his head around before she murdered him, that's so creepy.
Yeah, and I sit here because of the way I've seen this film is why, to me, it's camp.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why it's not camp is because it's one of those things that has to be taken very seriously.
Yeah.
You have to give it 100%, or it's going to come off as campy. So an actress like Ellen Burstyn is able to do that.
Yes, she is fantastic in this scene.
Yeah.
Also, again, William Friedkin being a dick. The harness on her when Reagan slaps her across the room, the harness on her back. She told him it was uncomfortable. She said, "You know, this is too much. You got to slow it down." So as soon as she went to film the scene again, he gave the special effects guy a look, the one who was pulling her on this harness, and he yanked it even harder to the point that you can see in the film her looking at her back when she falls to the ground and did serious damage. Why? Ellen Burstyn, before this scene, I don't know what order you shot the film in, but before this point, she has showcased so many fucking times that she is a phenomenal actress who is fully capable of giving an Oscar-worthy performance. Why the fuck have you got to injure her to get more of a reaction? I'm sure she could have gave a great reaction just being pulled lightly on the harness.
I don't think her Oscar nomination came purely because she fell really convincingly. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's this thing where actors act. It's in the fucking name.
And I think the documentary says a lot about the time, A, the documentary was released, and B, when this was filmed. When the fact that, you know, Ellen Burstyn was saying about how it wasn't okay, what happened to her, but she was still just laughing it off because, I mean, why would you think there's anything wrong with that? That's the way fucking Hollywood was at that point.
Exactly.
The possessed Reagan is now confined to her bedroom and strapped to her bed, probably for the best. Chris seeks out Karis and asks how to get an exorcism. He tells her it doesn't happen anymore. She tells him that Reagan is possessed and he agrees to visit her. Again, her performance in this scene as well. Oh my God. You genuinely feel for her. She genuinely acts completely hopeless.
Yeah.
And she's gone from living this glamorous lifestyle, you know, where she's always looking amazing. She could afford all the doctors in the world and everything, to the point where she has no hope and she has to turn to religion. She has to turn to this exorcism. And, you know, she's wearing sunglasses to cover up bruises on her eyes. She looks run down and really sells it.
Yeah, she's selling the outfit as well.
Oh yeah,
the
sunglasses,
that headscarf.
This is her meant to be dressing down, but she's still
camp.
slaying.
Still giving camp.
Yeah. Over 2 meetings, the possessed Reagan claims to be the devil himself, tells Karis that his mother is in the room with them, Projectile vomits into Karras' face, speaks in tongues, and reacts violently when tap water is sprinkled on her, which he claimed was holy water, a point against genuine possession. Karras asks Chris if there's any way Reagan could have known about his mother, who had died recently, and she tells him there's no way at all because she never told her. This is when we first see the makeup on Reagan, and this image again. It's so fucking scary. Like the makeup effects in this film, and even the practical effects with the dummy that twists its head around in the last scene, so fucking good.
Yeah, and this is the first time we hear the Mercedes from Cambridge voice as well. So we're in full on possession mode now.
Yeah.
And it's been building, and it kind of crescendoed with the crucifix head spinning scene.
Yeah.
But as an audience, we're like, oh my god, what now?
Mm-hmm.
What now? That was before she fucking fully turned demon.
Yeah.
What now? What's coming next? And I like the way that it doesn't stick with, you know, Reagan for the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back and forth, and you're kind of like, well, what the fuck is going to happen now? You know, we've still got half an hour left of the film. What the fuck's going to happen?
The scene where she projectile vomits at Father Karras only required one take. The vomit was intended to hit Jason Miller in the chest, but the plastic tubing misfired, hitting him in the face. So his reaction of shock and disgust whilst wiping away the vomit is genuine, and Miller admitted in an interview that he was very angered by the mistake. I mean, yeah, it's fucking disgusting.
Yeah. Was it actually pea soup, or is that it's actually?
It was originally another brand of soup. I can't remember the brand, but it didn't look real enough, so he went with pea soup. And
I bet it was cold as well.
Yeah, it's a disgusting image to look at. The demon says it will remain in Reagan until she's dead.
What the fuck is pea soup?
I have no idea.
Who would just have peas in soup? Sorry.
The demon says it will remain in Reagan until she's dead. I mean, yeah, isn't it just mushy peas?
Well, yeah, but it was like mushy, like blended pea. Like there must be something else to it, like pea and mint, or like pea and. Oh no! Ew.
Desperate.
Now it sounds like I'm talking about urine.
Desperate, Chris confides that the possessed Reagan killed Dennings. At night, Reagan's nanny calls Karras to the house, and they witness the words "help me" materializing on Reagan's skin.
Yeah. That was like, oh,
yeah. In a freezing cold bedroom, the refrigerated bedroom set was cooled with 4 air conditioners, and temperatures would plunge below 30 degrees. It was so cold that perspiration would freeze on some of the cast and crew. On one occasion, the air was saturated with moisture, resulting in a thin layer of snow falling on the set before the crew arrived for filming. Like, there's got to be laws against that, surely.
Why?
Even in,
working in those temperatures.
There's always that thing that you can work in an office or work in an environment that's too hot, but when it gets too cold, something has to be done. So
I think in 1973, I don't think there's regulations.
Well, yeah.
People talk about the good old days, but yeah. I don't think there was a minimum wage.
You know, it's made for one of the greatest films ever made. I mean, you can't complain at that, but it still would have been the greatest film ever made if you had suspended a bit of belief with a cold room and
and the environment as well.
Yeah,
just keeping it on all night.
Yeah.
Although, how great would the scene have been with the snow still intact?
I know. Yeah.
Could you imagine? I think that would have been quite ethereal.
Karras concludes that an exorcism is warranted now. Despite not fully believing it, he goes for it, and his superior grants permission on the condition that an experienced priest leads the ritual whilst Karras assists. Merrin, having performed an exorcism before, is summoned. And if you'd like to see that exorcism, watch The Exorcist: The Beginning or The Exorcist: Dominion.
Oh, is that what that's based?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
2 films filmed at the same time. About that one incident.
Merrin says, I hear you're in a crisis. I'm on my way.
He does. He
goes full super nanny in the back of the taxi, doesn't he?
In an iconic scene, he arrives at the house, smoke around, the lighting is just the lamp above him, the street lamp. Fucking looks incredible. It's on all the posters.
Yeah, seeing that poster when I was younger, I suppose I was used to seeing Freddy Krueger and Jason and whatnot. I thought, and not really understand it, and I mean young. I suppose I thought the Exorcist was the bad guy
Yeah.
because it's quite. I mean, it kind of looks like he's going to enter this house and start killing people. Because that's the kind of horror film I had known by that point.
And we've seen the iconic scene when we're going back.
We have.
He arrives at the house, warning Karis that the demon uses a psychological attack. As we finally get to the exorcism scene, like an hour and 45 minutes into the film or something like that, the priests read from the Roman ritual. The demon starts to curse them, including, "Stick your cock up her ass, you motherfucking worthless cocksucker."
She's Scottish. Why did you sound like Liam Neeson? I have no idea. No, Liam Neeson's Irish. That was a bit Irish, bit Scottish.
It focuses on Karis. She sounds a bit Irish. I think she sounds a bit Irish.
No, you sound a bit Irish.
It focuses on Karis.
The library is well and truly open.
Verbally attacking his loss of faith and guilt over the circumstances of his mother's death. We get the famous, "Your mother sucks cocks in hell, Karis, you faithless swine." And then we get, "Shove it up your ass, you F-slur."
Not the bunch of sticks slur.
And then it's, fuck him, Karis." I mean, he probably wanted to. We all know he's secretly gay. Reagan's straps undo and she begins to levitate. And we get the famous, "The power of Christ compels you" from the priests as Merrin throws holy water at her and cuts appear on her legs and she is lowered back down to the bed. A lot of people throw chilling around when describing certain things in horror films. To me, this is the scene that defines what a chilling moment in a horror film looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. I mean, her eyes are white again. It's just a great effect as well.
It's a great image. It's almost like a painting. Her there, and I'm sure, someone's done like a painting of it. Because it's a very small, enclosed place. So everything's sort of come together in the film for this moment in this enclosed room, this tiny room. And then we get this shot, very sort of close to the three characters. And I thought it was very sort of, what is that word? For like, when it looks like a painting?
Picturesque.
Yeah, okay, we'll give it that. Yeah.
The priest rests momentarily as Merrin, shaken, takes nitroglycerin. Karis enters the bedroom where the demon appears as his mother. Showing weakness, Karis exclaims that the demon is not his mother, which causes Merrin to excuse him and continue the exorcism by himself. Really weird imagery, seeing his mum on Reagan's bed. The way it's lit and everything, it looks great.
Yeah, it's a very striking image.
Karis assures Chris that Reagan will not die and re-enters the room, finding Merrin dead. So, it's the title character. He shows up an hour and 45 minutes into the film and fucking dies after like 10 minutes.
He does. It was alluded to earlier in the film, wasn't it? That he was taking some sort of medication. Assuming the idea is that he's had some sort of heart attack.
Yeah.
It's all just been a bit too much for him.
Karis beats the possessed Reagan and demands that the demon takes him instead. The demon rips a medallion of Saint Joseph from Karis's neck and begins to possess him, freeing Reagan. The sound of the demon leaving Reagan's body is actually the sound of pigs being herded for slaughter. This alludes to a story in the New Testament where Jesus cast out several demons, collectively called Legion, from a man and transfers them into the bodies of pigs. The pigs are then drowned, similar to Father Karis, dying after accepting the demon.
Oh.
So, yeah,
there we are.
Lots of shit going on in the Bible.
Yeah, but he makes the ultimate sacrifice to save Regan. Yeah. He couldn't save his mother, but he can save Regan.
Yeah. He hurls himself out of the window, tumbling down the stairs outside. Chris and Kinderman enter the room, and Chris embraces the healed Reagan, and Kinderman surveys the violence and confusion. Outside, Karis's lover, Father Dyer, administers the last rites as he dies. Another case of what we should have called this whole episode, William Friedkin being a dick, a special segment that we've had repeated occurrences of. He went to some extraordinary lengths to get realistic reactions from the cast. He fired off guns behind the actors to get the required startled effect. And when Father Dyer is attempting to administer last rites to Father Karras, Friedkin was not satisfied after several takes. He was not satisfied with the actual priest who was not an actor, not giving a realistic performance. He took William O'Malley aside and asked, "Do you trust me?" O'Malley said yes, just in time to get slapped across the face. Friedkin immediately said action, and the result is in the film. You can see his hand shaking, like during the scene, and it's not a performance. That's actual. Yeah. He assaulted a cast member.
Yeah.
There's no way around that. He assaulted a cast member.
He did. And the bullshit part is that these aren't the parts that we remember from the film.
No.
They really aren't. You know, there are moments in the film, but I don't think, oh, remember that bit at the end where his hand was shaking? What a great performance by that guy who was barely in the film.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, oh, didn't Ellen Burstyn do a wonderful falling on her ass?
Yeah.
You know, they're not the parts that we remember. They're not the parts that add to the film. You know, it's the special effects. It's the, you know, performances of sadness and grief and, you know, just haven't had enough. You know, it's those parts of the films that we remember. So why is he, I suppose you'd call it micromanaging every single second of the film?
Firing off guns as well to get people on edge of performances. They're fucking actors. It's their jobs. They can do this.
If you don't think that they are capable of giving the performance that you need, don't hire them.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
McNeil's prepared to leave and Father Dyer says goodbye. Despite having no memory of her ordeal, Reagan is moved by the sight of Dyer's clerical collar to kiss him on the cheek.
There we go. And that sums up the film entirely.
As the McNeils leave, Chris gives Dyer the medallion found in Reagan's room. But Dyer places it back in her hand and suggests that she keep it.
Because she's a godless woman, she has now embraced religion.
After she and Reagan drive away, Dyer pauses at the top of the stone steps before walking away and coming across Kinderman, who narrowly missed Chris and Reagan's departure. Kinderman and Dyer begin to develop a friendship over films.
They do. Funny that Kinderman seemingly is fine with the explanation. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. It was a demon that killed Burke. Yeah, okay. Okay, cool. Do you want to go watch, you know, The Way We Were down there?
But yeah,
I hear angels playing. I'm seeing it for the 7th time.
It's a really interesting ending. Considering it's a horror film and, you know, everything's meant to lead up to a sequel, it's a really interesting thing having an happy ending. 1 week after the film's release to great success, the studio contacted William Friedkin to propose a sequel. He simply said, "How no?" and hung up the phone. And here we are in 2022 with 4 sequels, a TV series, Dolls of Reagan, Funko Pops. It's a pop culture phenomenon, and new sequels are currently being made by the team who made the Halloween requels.
With Ellen Burstyn. She's in her 80s now, still killing it.
Last year, she delivered a phenomenal performance in Pieces of Woman.
Yeah.
You know, she's still going. Absolutely. She's still got it.
I, hands down, as amazing, and you haven't seen it, as amazing as she is in The Exorcist, Requiem for a Dream, one of my favourite performances of all time. She's absolutely phenomenal in that film. We need to watch that ASAP.
But yeah, that's The Exorcist. And
that's The Exorcist.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, putting the religious stuff aside, it's a flawless film. From start to finish, every frame is perfect, every performance is perfect. It's just phenomenal.
It's one of those films that I love on the podcast. It's a film that we've watched many times, well established, and it's nice to sit there and we make our notes and we look at it and we analyze it, and at the end we're like, wow, that was fantastically made. I always knew that, but we see it on a different level.
Yeah,
we see the filmmaking. We can, when we're not I can only speak for myself, but I'm not a complete expert on filmmaking.
No.
But I've seen a fair amount of films.
Yeah.
You know, I like to think I know what I'm talking about. So I can see it from that perspective, which gives it a whole new meaning to me.
Yeah.
And a new appreciation.
Absolutely. Let's get to the awards.
Yeah.
Biggest queen, of course, it is none other than Chris McNeil.
It certainly is. Absolutely, she slays throughout.
She does. Yeah.
We've explained why.
Yeah, for more of us standing Ellen Burstyn, just rewind the episode back to the start and listen to it again.
Absolutely.
Biggest gasp for me is the crucifix masturbation.
Yeah, for me it was the Regan wetting herself. scene.
Yeah.
That one really got me.
Best dialogue I have. Do you know what she did, your canting daughter?
I went for the obvious. Your mother sucks cocks in hell, Paris. It was. Do you think? I think this might be a time to discuss this. Do you think that shocking dialogue isn't as effective now?
Yes. Children swearing in films has been shocking for many years. The most recent one that caused outrage and controversy was Kick-Ass, when Chloe Grace Moretz says, "Okay, you cunts."
Yeah.
That was the big last one I remember being shocking. Since that point on, those are the two staples, that and this, Kick-Ass and The Exorcist, with children swearing being a massive deal. Since Kick-Ass, though, it's not a shock anymore. Like, it's, the amount of films we get now with children swearing where no one bats an eyelid.
Yeah, yeah.
At the time, when I first watched this, this was shocking. It was like, oh my God. But again, Your Mother Sucks Cocks in Hell had been parodied to death before that, so I'd already,
And also, from a very modern perspective, it's kind of slut-shaming, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
If someone says your mother sucks cocks in hell, they'd be like, "Yes, girl, you get yours." Yes.
Great time.
Jealous.
Great time beyond the grave.
Yeah.
Maybe she wasn't the best place dying. He did her a favour.
But and it kind of loses its effect over time. Something like the F slur as well. I'm sure that was very shocking. I'm not really sure if that was shocking because the kid was saying a swear word, or the homophobia implied. I'm not sure, or the idea that she would insinuate the two priests were homosexual.
Yeah.
I'm not, because obviously that F slur was used a lot back then.
Yeah.
So maybe that wasn't, the homophobia wasn't the shocking part. Maybe it was the insinuation that two priests were shagging was the shocking part, but I digress.
Yeah. And finally, that's camp. I have Chris McNeil's party outfit and wig.
Yeah, I said for me, time, from first watch to now, it was made and now, we're looking at 50 years almost. Rewatches and the numerous parodies have made pretty much the whole film quite camp for me. But Chris McNeil and her fashions, they give pure camp queen energy. Headscarves and sunglasses, anyone?
The best grieving outfit you'll ever see. Ratings, I give it 10 cunting daughters out of 10.
I give it 10 cocksucking grannies out of 10.
Of course, masterpiece, trash of basic. Of course, it is a masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece. It
and
really
it's
is.
Available on DVD, Blu-ray, and video on demand. And if you enjoy this, I recommend checking out The Exorcist Free.
Oh, good choice. If you enjoyed,
you can skip 2. It's fine. You can skip 2. It's a direct sequel.
I went a little more basic. If you enjoyed this, you will enjoy The Omen. It's,
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Another cursed film.
A lot of supernatural films that came out after, but I think The Omen's probably the best of the bunch.
Obviously, the Julia Stiles one. You mean?
Oh yeah, the one released
Mia Farrow.
The 6th of June 2006.
Yes. Next week, before we get to that, I've got to tell us if you like the film. What am I doing? I do this every week. We are on social media, Horror Cult Trash over on Facebook and Instagram, Horror Cult Trash on Twitter. I'm DelecGaz92 on Letterboxd. Gasmo205 on Instagram and GasCruise92 on Twitter.
I'm Chris Barker823 on Instagram and Letterboxd.
And give us a rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, like and follow on everything else. A rating on Spotify. Buy our merch on redbubble.com if you would so kindly do so, and wear our faces on random objects. Next week, we have a double episode week. The first of 2 double episode weeks this month. Starting with Killer Clowns from Outer Space on the Tuesday.
Yes. Now that is a Halloween film.
It is. It is definitely a Halloween film. And on Friday, we'll be giving you our highlights from this year's BFI London Film Festival.
Yeah. Maybe more prestigious.
Maybe.
Than Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yes. But we'll be back same time, same place next week.
Bye.